Welcome everyone. I hope everyone is having a great new year. Grab a seat. I hope you have something nice to drink. If you're eating lunch, feel free, enjoy. Because this is webinar, you can be as you are. You will not be on screen unless we bring you on screen, which would be interesting. It has happened where we bring people on screen. Nice, nice. We got a nice group coming today. Do some networking in the chat. There's really, really good people here today. Not that there aren't always really good people. I know I say it every time. There's really good people. All right. We are going to get started, my friends. So I am excited to start a new year. New year, in year 12 of Meet the Author. If this is your first time, welcome, welcome. If you're coming back, welcome back. Meet the Author has been around for 12 years. We are based out of Philadelphia. We do our in-person programs at the fabulous Pyramid Club in Center City, Philadelphia, and we do our virtual programs right here on Zoom. We have authors from all around the world, and we continue this journey because we love it. We are number 4 on Philadelphia Business Journal's Best Business Networking, and that includes not just in person, but also on Zoom. So we're very, very proud of that. We're going to do some announcements before we get started with our presentation. Um, First of all, let's see what's coming up. February 26th, we have an in-person program at the Pyramid Club. We have not one, not two, but 3 really awesome speakers. Erica Rothenberger, Jen Kronberger, and Lisa Cohn. Each of these speakers it could stand alone by themselves and carry the program, but we have all 3 of them. It is amazing. They've written great books. The networking will be great. We'll have awesome food, and the view, of course, is wonderful. February 26th at 6 o'clock. Do, do, do. I want to introduce you to Lysandra. Those of you who've been here before, you know Lysandra is my partner in crime. She's my co-producer, and she is also our chat room ambassador. Lysandra, bring the love. Bring the love.
Welcome, everyone. Happy Friday. Happy New Year. Sending abundance of bright, positive energy from Philadelphia, Pennsylvania. It is not sunny here today, but it's cozy. It's cozy. I am so excited to be your chat room ambassador as we get to glean some nuggets from Amber today. I'm so excited that we're starting the year with such an abundance of information and food to chew on and nibble on. So please feel free to ask questions in the chat. I'll be elevating them up for Amber and Teresa as we go along. And if you have any reflections, put them in as well.
Cool, cool. Thank you so much, Lysandra. And we want to make sure you guys are engaged and having fun in the chat room. So feel free to make friends and make comments and ask questions. Lysandra will keep us in the loop if any questions come up. And now we are ready to begin. So I was brave. You know, I always introduce the author with how we met. I was brave. Somebody on LinkedIn posted, it might have been Josh. I can't remember who it was. Somebody posted Amber's book. And I looked at it and I said, "Oh, onboarding to everboarding, that sounds really good. That sounds interesting because I have a passion for employee onboarding because I know that if it's done right, it makes a huge difference. And when it's not done right, oh, it's bad. It's bad. And I've seen some bad. So I thought this is great that somebody took the time to pull this together, to analyze this, to look at it and say, what does it look like to do this well? So I thought, I don't know her, but she's part of ATD. She must be nice. So I reached out and said, hey, I have this thing. Would you be willing to do this? And she said yes. So we met in November and had a great chat. And of course, both being ATD people and L&D folks, we had a lot to talk about and a lot in common. So, but how fast a couple months has gone, here we are. And I am so honored to introduce our author for the day, Omaha, Nebraska. She's traveling a long way to Philly, and she is the founder and CEO of Radical Growth Works, Amber Watts. Thank you.
Awesome. And thanks for the introduction, Teresa. I'm gonna get my screen shared here in just a second. If everybody could just give me a nice little nod that it works. Okay,
Looks
perfect.
good.
Awesome. Well, again, thank you for inviting me today. Like you said, it was a nice, pleasant surprise to get the message and found out, yes, we do have a lot of connections in common, a lot of, past work in common as well, and we share a lot of the similar insights. Just quick context on me. I won't spend a ton of time with an introduction. Um, I I decided to write this book because I actually started my journey really focused on onboarding. I joined a team that when I left there, I felt like I left Disney World because they truly were the best of the best. I learned best practices in my very first position in L&D, and I'm very grateful for that. It felt like a master class. Our onboarding program was so robust and comprehensive that we got to a point where people were earning college credit at the end of it. It was one of those we earned a ton of awards through Training Magazine, ATD, all the things. And then I got to a point where I said, you know what? This is a well-oiled machine. I want to go do this somewhere else, a totally different industry, totally different roles to design for, and I want to go build my own thing. So I went to tech. And I found my happy place. I love being in tech because most tech companies are in hypergrowth for the most part. And I built their onboarding program. Now they had a lot of things in place, but I came in and I standardized and ended up winning a Stevie Award for the best sales training and coaching program of the year for the onboarding I created there. So I knew I had found a good formula, and I started to take that from place to place. And then eventually I opened my own consulting company and started to prove the concept there as well of these things do work. I ended up taking the extra step this year to trademark Everboarding as well. So you'll see that there. That is a newer development for me. But I'm really excited that I was able to bring this book to the world because what I did is I took something that worked for a lot of different industries, a lot of companies of different sizes, and I made it something that is standardized and you can scale it. So it is a simple, repeatable process that any industry and any company can use. But what I think ultimately is that onboarding is one of those things that people do well. Companies do it well, but they struggle after that. They struggle with performance, they struggle with engagement, and they struggle with turnover, which is why this book exists, and which is why when ATD approached me to write on onboarding, I said, I will if you let me approach it in the way that I believe onboarding should be done, which is truly like an everboarding concept. All right, so I'm going to put this in the out there for just to kind of get us thinking in this format. But if you could respond in the chat, I'm curious, um, which statement would you say best describes onboarding in your organization? So is it something that lasts 30 days? Is it something that's a one-day event and it's done? Or is it something that is very unique to the hiring manager, meaning they're the ones who run it? So those three things. Is it done after 30 days? Is onboarding viewed as a one-day thing? Or is it put on your hiring manager to complete? And I'm going to try to look at the chat as well. Unique to hiring manager, 30 days. Okay, I got a couple responses in there. Is there an other? Is there something I didn't mention? Is it had a variety, 5 day, 30 day, 6 month, hybrid, self-served? Yeah, so orientation, and some companies look at onboarding as orientation. I do think that's a good thing to maybe take back to your organization and define if you haven't already. To me, HR owns orientation. L&D should own the onboarding, which is the launch phase of Everboarding. Um, yeah, spotty, done by managers. Uh, all of these things, like very, very common, right? And so that's the thing is that we're all talking about the same thing, yet we're describing it differently. And I think that's where the disconnect tends to happen, and that's where that gap ultimately lives. Um, it means different things inside each one of our organizations. And because of that inconsistency, you might even see it with your internal stakeholders. Your HR department might define it differently than you do in L&D or vice versa. Yeah, HR owns orientation, L&D owns onboarding. That's the standard, right? That's typical. That's the traditional way, but every company is built a little bit differently. So which is the beauty of my book is it's not a it can be a one size fits all because it's adaptable. All right. So what I like to do when I start talking about what's the difference between onboarding and everboarding, I like to try to provide some visuals, and you'll find a lot of those in my book as well. But most onboarding programs, they're designed to peak on day one. And that's what I found in with working with a lot of organizations. But your performance is never going to show up on day one. And that is the purpose of onboarding is to get people to performing. If you've heard of Tuckman's model, but that one's more for about team building and relationship building over time. But it actually applies to the employee new hire journey if you think about it as well. Our job is to get them, from that forming, storming, then norming, and then performing, right? And that's truly what the everboarding concept is built around. What you'll see is that performance starts to show up between months 3 and 12. And this is just very typical. All roles are going to be different. But when expectations start to become implicit, your feedback is going to start to slow down. Your employees are also just suddenly expected to just know. And we rarely design for what happens after that, right? We rarely design for what happens during that norming and performing phase. We leave it up to the managers. So here's what I want to think about reframing today. Number one is that your onboarding ends too early and the data uh, proves it. Second is onboarding is a system and it's not an event. Managers are your multiplier, or they could be your bottleneck. And then measurement should predict performance and not report activity. I actually just had an article come out with ATD, the January, February issue, which is their newest issue. And I talk about onboarding metrics in there of how to get away from some of the traditional ones because we want to give them predictive analytics. We don't want to give them what's already happened. And I'll actually talk about that a little bit more today, too. All right, so why does traditional onboarding fall short? For me, the way that I always like to explain it, especially if I'm working with a new organization, is your onboarding isn't broken. And most of the time it is being done well, whatever version that is, whether it's 1 day, 1 week, etc. It's just that it's incomplete. And when I come in and have an alignment conversation with a stakeholder, whoever is responsible for sponsoring an onboarding initiative or maybe a new role and we need a design training for it, when I define onboarding, it's always I need to get them to a place of autonomy. Once they have that autonomy, they are no longer onboarding. They have now moved into the next phase of their development, which I'll talk more about when I share my model with you. But what's happening is that today onboarding in organizations is ending before their performance starts to stabilize. What I see is, oh, especially in sales, oh, they got that first sale. They're onboarded. They're good to go. They've done the process, so to speak. That couldn't be farther from the truth. I actually think when people have early success, it actually hinders them because it gives them a false sense of success. And they need to make sure that no matter what role they're in, they, meaning the employee, that they are still following the foundational steps. So we want performance to be stable, consistent, that looks different for each role before onboarding technically ends. It also is going to assume confidence just because they completed something. Um, if you are graduating your new hires, I'm not here to tell you you're doing something terrible. But one of the things I do call out in my book is that was a lesson I learned along the way is if I want them to come back after onboarding is over, I can't keep graduating them because I'm telling them you are maybe a master or you've succeeded, and then even the manager will give you pushback and say, I don't understand. They went through the onboarding, they got the certification. Why do they need to come back and learn more? So if you remove that permanent milestone, something that feels just very complete, it actually starts to tell a different story, and it helps with your influence internally too. Um, and then we also are just leaving our managers without a playbook. So clarity doesn't automatically just turn into capability, right? So we have to be thinking about what is the system that we're doing to support them once the formal learning ends, which is what onboarding truly is. So I conducted a poll, and this was like an ongoing thing at each event that I went to. I would ask this question. I wanted to understand what were the reasons why onboarding was falling short. And what I got from them was is that there's two reasons, two major reasons across the board, across the industry, at all these different events. Number one was number two was lack of real world application in onboarding. And I put this picture of this construction site. Couldn't tell you how many construction companies reach out to me to help with onboarding because it is complex and it is a high risk environment. Um, how do you put somebody through onboarding and then send them off to a job site and expect whatever happened in a formal learning environment to translate to this? So we needed real world application. And this is my summary of some of these poll results, which is onboarding often prioritizes knowledge transfer over skill building, which I'm telling you something you probably are already aware of. But even though we're aware of it, it is still happening. And these events and all of these people I asked proves that this is still a compelling issue. The second one being is that technology is advancing faster than traditional onboarding can keep up. AI, anybody? It's all we hear about. Conferences are just flooded with AI right now. And I do believe it's important. I do believe you have to continue to keep up with the race of technology. But our onboarding, most of them, and I have asked this question as well at events, which is simply, when's the last time you updated your onboarding program? On average, I was getting 1 year. So if things are changing and AI is something that your workforce is right now upskilling everybody in, we need to think about where does that live in your onboarding or your foundations type training. Um, we need to be putting that in there as well, and not just upskilling the current workforce and then just deciding afterwards, oh, new hires should get that. We need to be strategic about where that lies. Um, and this one again, just summarizing some of this is, your new hires risk being outdated before they even get started if we aren't thinking about the programs that we have in place today for upskilling and how they fit into our onboarding. All right. So here's the shift that I think changes everything. When I get asked what is the difference between onboarding and everboarding. Oh, I'll pause for a second. Go ahead, Lysandra.
Hey, Amber, I just wanted to, because it seemed relevant to the topic,
Yeah.
we had a comment in the chat about the role that employees not feeling that they have ownership in their onboarding. Like, how does that show up in the effectiveness?
Okay, that is a very big question that I do want to answer. This came up on a podcast that I was on recently too about, owning their learning. And part of the Everboarding system, I haven't quite got there yet, and I am going to show that here shortly, is what that looks like from being more self-led. And I think there are things that we do up front early on, and it's not talking about culture and values up front enough. Like I was working with a client recently where, they were wanting to measure the effectiveness of onboarding. And I said, over and over, you keep telling me we live our culture, we live our values, but you are actually, you don't know that that's happening in the field or in the trenches. So why not ask your new hires? Great. You feel like they should have observed this core value, this core value, this core value up front. Ask them how they saw that show up and start to empower them to start to think about how they could also, lead by example and whatnot. When this type of thing really does come down to the culture of the organization, in my opinion, this is something that is a huge change management initiative that has to happen. So in order for employees to feel empowered and like they have ownership, they have to feel supported by their manager. That's a top engagement driver in any organization, that they feel supported. They know the value that they bring to the organization. That starts far in the pre-hire process, the pre-boarding process. During the interview, they should be able to show up on day one understanding the importance of their role and how it impacts the business. If that is not clear to them, then we that ownership is not going to exist either. And then you're kind of like backpedaling a little bit. The manager has to be equipped to have a conversation like that. Again, resources and tools. Um, do you have a repository or a place for them to go, whether it's an intranet, et cetera, where if they don't know the answer, they can go get it? Or is that just on the manager, right? It's hard to feel like you have ownership if you're constantly having to ping your manager for questions. So there are some systematic pieces, which is actually kind of what we're about to talk about, which is that we have to think about your onboarding as part of a larger system. I like to call it the launch phase or leg one of the relay. I hate viewing this as an event. We are not event planners. It may feel like that, but we're actually designers. Um, I do think that if we start to think about onboarding as an event, the outcomes are really dependent on the individual, the manager, the team, or how motivated that employee is. But if we can make it a system, then it becomes repeatable. And systems, they're designed, right? But events are scheduled. So when you think system instead of event, three things are going to change for you immediately. You're going to move from completion to readiness. You're going to go from HR owned to manager enabled. And then you're going to move from day one focused. Day one is not your Super Bowl. Year one is your Super Bowl. It's the longest Super Bowl that you're ever going to experience. And that's your employee's journey from day zero beyond. Um, and I think this is where most onboarding conversations tend to stop. It's right here. It's this day one, this HR own, this completion, and this is where we need just to be more intentional. So I like to describe everboarding as designing the first year on purpose. And you have to shift your strategy. Instead of onboarding as a box to check, instead it's just going to be that first step in employee development instead. So your old mindset is a box to check, and your new mindset is going to be it's the first step in a continuous journey. And I like to say year one because it's just kind of a good solid timeline first, but it's indefinite. This image is in my book. When I was speaking with the editors, they really wanted something to showcase, like, what is the difference between traditional onboarding and what you're describing? So what I did is I just mapped out what's typical. This is what you see in most organizations, right? Pre-boarding, paperwork, 2 weeks of role-specific training most of the time, and then you start to see your traditional 30, 60, 90-day check-ins. And it probably lasts 1 to 2 months at most. Whereas Everboarding, it has all of these things, but it's more focused on like a program, these systems where training-led onboarding, then the manager-led development, and then the self-led refinement. Nobody is going to be self-led unless they're prepared and supported. So I like to explain it again, systematic approach. What is it? It's a program that continues development after your onboarding ends. Great. But everboarding is actually a strategy that supports all of your talent management programs from talent acquisition to succession planning. It's all interconnected, and your employees right now are probably experiencing it in silos, and it feels a little clunky. So here is my book, 3 sections. I have a relay analogy right out of the gate. And leg one is your onboarding, leg two is your development, and leg three is refinement. Because I don't believe that onboarding is about, it's not, I'm sorry, I don't believe everboarding is about more onboarding. It's not a longer checklist. It's not more formal training. It's a way for us to design the entire first year with their performance in mind instead. Which is why I broke this down into 3 phases, and each one has a totally different purpose. Um, so leg one of onboarding, talent development is going to carry the baton. I actually have a physical Everboarding baton. There is one traveling around right now. I'm anxious to see what they do with it. Happy to answer that later. But this is your initial role training. It's your foundational knowledge. And the idea is that you're building confidence in this phase. And it's not going to come from info. It comes from clarity. It comes from practice, back to that real world application. This is where that success for their role is defined for them. You want to talk about ownership in their onboarding. They have to know exactly what it means to be successful. It needs to be very clear and specific, no room for ambiguity. Expectations are also explicit, and that comes down to even like attitude, how we receive feedback and give feedback here. And then we create a safe practice environment. Number two, the second leg is the development, and this is where the manager gets the baton. This is after they start to get some form of autonomy. Manager is still involved in the first leg, but they are not leading it. Just like we are not leading development, the manager is, but we're not gone. That's where the system comes into place. We help them build practical application and how to measure it. We help them with what is some ongoing skill building. We design those systems. The manager is just the one being the messenger and carrying it through. And your handoff is going to determine that person's momentum, their path to success and performance. But you have to have these ongoing feedback loops. There has to be guided application. And I have a personal trainer method in my book, and I talk about visible progress signals. Managers don't know. Some of your managers only hire one person a year. This is something we have to help them with. What does good look like? Like I said, the article that I had with TD Magazine this month, I gave some very specific examples of onboarding metrics. And then the last leg here is refinement. And this is when the employee is able to carry their own baton. They start to have ownership of their growth and mentorship. They start to solicit mentorship. And then this is when we start thinking more about succession planning with them as well. Maybe they were hired for a very specific purpose for succession planning, but we're talking about higher level roles there. Most people are brought in and there's different trajectories for them. And this is when those conversations start to happen. Um, this is where that retention is earned. And when I say earned, I mean by the organization. We have done enough to ensure we are going to retain them. But we want them to have self-directed growth. We want their behaviors and their competency and skills to advance. And we want to make sure that there is clarity around where those career signals are, like where it makes sense for them to go. Maybe they're a rock star and they're just going to stay in that role and level up, whereas a superstar might move on to other places in the organization, whether upward or lateral. And I know I'm moving fast through this because I only have a limited time, and this is a topic that I'm obviously very passionate about. Um, and I'm happy to, provide this deck afterwards too. So L&D's role, like I said, it's not ownership, it's design. We are there to design the system, we're there to enable the managers, and we are there to measure impact. So what to remember out of today, I always like to end with a few key takeaways when I give a lot of info is number one, your first year is going to predict performance every step of the way. Second one is your managers are your multipliers, but they can also be your bottlenecks. I like to describe it as they decide whether or not their employee eats lunch that day, right? So you have to go align with them if you want any of your initiatives to succeed. They are they're your detractors and they're, like I said, also your multipliers. So align with them. Any training is a change. They got to be your change agents. And then metrics. I want you to think about them predicting and not reporting. I really stress getting away from completion rates when it comes to onboarding. If you start to track just onboarding metrics over a year's time, you have enough data then to say, here's what others have done, and here's what we've seen. So if this person was successful in at the year one mark, here are all the things that they did. And you start to find those patterns, and then you can start to refine your onboarding program better. But you can then be a very powerful partner to your stakeholders and say, hey, This person, 3 months in, they're behind because this is what we typically see. And we are predicting that they are not going to hit this milestone. So intervention is needed, right? You really start to become a true powerful partner that way versus saying they completed this, they went through this, there shouldn't be an issue, training's not a problem. We really need to think about intervention versus completion. All right. So I'm going to end with this before we open it up to Q&A. If you design your first year, performance becomes predictable. And this is a nice little graphic of my book. I also have it sitting here as well. But this just came out in September. It was a 2-year journey for me. So would love for some feedback if any of you have already read it or if you plan to read it. Please reach out and share what your takeaways were. Okay. Teresa, I feel like I just met your 30-minute deadline.
Oh my gosh. And you know what? You could easily keep going, Amber, because we're together till 1 o'clock. So
Okay.
we've
Okay.
we've got plenty of time. But maybe in our Q&A, there'll be some other things in your presentation that you want to hop in and take a deeper dive. So
Sure. Yeah.
so feel free. So by the way, thank you. Great stuff. Great stuff. It's interesting. I'm sitting here thinking to myself, I think some companies have just orientation and no onboarding, if that makes any sense. Like something that happens week one where like here's your computer and but like I honestly think some companies do nothing. So,
Correct.
so just to have like your book is like, wow, that's like really taking them. But so my first question for you is, what's the biggest mindset shift for leaders so that they stop looking at onboarding as like an event and look at it more as an experience?
Mm. So that depends on the organization. I know everybody says depends, but I'm going to be specific in what I mean by that. It depends on the organization and the culture. So I have walked into organizations where they had never had a me before. So onboarding was on them and to them. And how many of you have heard this? Like, hey, I have a lot of experience in training. If you need any help, like I'm here, happy to help. And you're like, thank you. But their viewpoint of training or
Yes.
onboarding is vastly different than what we do, right? I go back to we are designers. We are not event planners. And I think our stakeholders, especially if they've never interacted with an us before, view us as event planners. It's, hey, schedule the training, they'll consume. Where the shift happens is I'm not asking them to come consume content. I say, hey, I'm going to go work with your SMEs on your team. I'm going to provide what they need to know. But that is 10% of what's actually going to be necessary to move the needle. I need to know the structure of your team of who is going to reinforce this. What is realistic? Do I need to help you design one-on-ones differently? Do they need to be asking different questions? Do we need to be changing the frequency of one-on-ones? Is there a new dashboard or report that I need to create in order for them to keep an eye on this? Because managers don't really know what those signals are or what to look for. So I think the reinforcement is the biggest shift because for them, they never think about, here's what they think about, what needs to be taught and how we're going to measure it. But we all know that we're kind of putting the cart before the horse. If you just come in and you get the content done and you figure out how to measure it, well, measurements, you're going to see some bad results most likely because nobody is reinforcing it after the training. So the biggest mindset shift really is about that. What is that reinforcement strategy? And how do you get them to press down on their leaders, their people leaders, to make sure that this training is successful?
Yeah, yeah. And I'm sure not every leader, I mean, let me ask you that, Amber. You put together this great system, great plan. Do you ever have some leaders that just aren't buying in and are just not, they're just not participating?
Yes. And so I have a strong sales background as well. So I actually have done programs where I took my Everboarding concept because of what you're describing. And I said, hey, let's just talk today less about what Everboarding is, because I have a book. You can go read the book. I've got resources. Let's talk about less what it is. And let's talk about more how you sell it internally and how do you get people, like get traction
Ah,
around it. So what I find is, yes, you're always going to have the detractors. But as soon as you find that one leader who's like a mobilizer and they're ready to go, great, you got a pilot group. And then you can come back to the naysayers and you can say, hey, here's what they did. And you can compare their team's results with their team's results and say, I want to get you here and I want to get you to this. Now we're going to see a 10% increase in X because, well, I've already done it over here. Um, that's most of where my case studies, when I come into an organization to help them with this, like I have a client right now, we are only doing it within office versus like field because they know the field is going to be the most resistant to it. And that is part of my
mm-hmm.
intake process. Who are going to be your naysayers? What objections are they going to have? Great. Let's start here then. Who is that? So that's usually my approach, even when I'm helping a client pull this off.
Super smart to have that be part of the plan from the beginning, knowing that not everybody will be on board and who are those folks that we're going to have to spend a little more time to win the love. Love it. Lysandra, I see your hand is raised and the chat room is on fire.
Oh
So
boy.
Yes.
what's happening, Lysandra?
There's a lot of activity in the chat room. So, one discussion that is happening in the chat room is how do you design a program so that it scales across diverse roles and individual
Mhm.
needs? So, that's a discussion that's going on, and I wanted to see if Amber has any thoughts there. And then there's another question, but let's pause.
Okay, so scaling across diverse roles. So I do touch on this quite a bit in my book, like how to build role-specific onboarding. I like to take it department by department. Um, there, most of the time, and it comes down to org structure, and I can't stress that enough. You are going to find that if you are a skills-based organization, this is much easier to do. And I say a skills-based organization where if active listening, I'm just going to use something very vague that's, relevant to all of us. If you say active listening means X, doesn't matter what your role is in the company. If you go from engineering to product or to sales, like active listening means the same across the board. That is a skills-based org, right? Your skills are transferable. When companies don't have something like that in place, it is much harder. You have to then do that work yourself. And this is something that I've seen done really well, and I've seen done somewhat poorly as well. But you have to take the time to go through your job descriptions. Are they up to date? Is the
Mm,
hiring manager does the hiring manager believe that what's in that job description is actually what they expect that person to do on the job? I can't tell you how many times there's misalignment between what HR is posted and what the manager thinks they should know. And then what happens is what you're training and providing, it's disconnected, and they go to their team and their manager says, yeah, ignore everything that they said in training. None, I don't need you to know any of that. So you have to kind of take a step back and try to align everybody to make sure that everybody's on the same page about what those expectations are before you start to design, because you're going to be spinning your wheels otherwise. If you can start to map and find that crossover, in a revenue organization, where I've done this is if they're in pre-sales or post-sales, it doesn't matter. They all need to know the customer. They all need to know the product. You can start to push them all through similar journeys to have that camaraderie. Then they split off and they go to team. And this is where you leverage your SMEs. You need to have some subject matter trainers. Take the time to have a program around up leveling them to be good facilitators. Do not leave it up to them to design the content. You are the expert. You're the designer. They are there to facilitate. We just need to equip them to facilitate and provide the real world examples that we don't have, the relevancy. So what that just keeps the content from changing too much from person to person. If you can have a structured class, that they go through with that subject matter trainer. But then you tell them, hey, right here would be a good time to insert a good example of how that has showed up for you recently, and start to piece that together. Then each time they can tell their story, and it is different, but it still follows the same flow. Everyone gets the same onboarding experience because otherwise, how do you measure it? If you think about it, it's madness. Like, if they're all getting different experiences, how can you truly measure the success of your onboarding program? At that point, it's too varied. You have too many different varied versions of it, and it's your data's dirty then. So that was a very long answer, but it's because it's a very complex question, and it really depends on what you already have in place. If you don't have a skills based or a skills matrix in place, it is tougher. You have to start a little bit further back. So I hope that made sense. I hope I brought everybody along that journey the way I intended to.
No, it made great sense, Amber. Lysandra, I see a couple other questions, but I want to let you um manage the flow because we got a lot of chatter going on out there.
Yes, I see one. So in a space where managers are wearing the L&D hat, that they are L&D and their own end managers.
Hmm.
How do you, what are your thoughts on ensuring that there's proper ownership of long-term skill building instead of simple knowledge transfer to fill their immediate need and sometimes short-sighted need?
Yeah. Okay. Step one is always, well, I'm going to say if they are the ones in charge of it, if you have 15 of them, you have 15 different onboarding experiences, right? And it's really hard then to say, like, we're responsible for new hire success because we're not. And we have a dotted line, but it's really kind of gray. So, step one is get them in a room together and ask and understand, what are you doing today? First of all, you start to see who who is doing something really well that you want to scale and replicate across the board. And then you start to see where others are gravitating toward, like, oh, that's a good idea. I don't do that with my people. I do it this way, but I like that. Like, start to part of our role really is bringing people together because they're not going to do it themselves. When I say people, I mean people who are in similar roles, especially your managers. Create an environment where they can collaborate. That is a big part of our role. And that could be a Teams channel, whatever it may be. But get them in a room together, understand what they're doing today, bring them along in the process this is where that system comes in. Section 2 of my book talks a lot about manager toolkits. And I use the word toolkit because it's broad enough for any organization. Toolkit could be a G Drive, toolkit could be in a CMS, I've even seen people use an LMS for it. Um, Toolkit could be your intranet, and they have their own SharePoint page. It needs to be a dedicated space for managers to go to. I have a client that right now that is using the Effective Manager. I'm not sponsoring the Effective Manager, just throwing it out there. They are using the Effective Manager and they have set guidance around how often do you meet with your employees and what do those one-on-one conversations need to look like. That lives in the manager toolkit, along with HR conversations. Hey, my employee said X. I don't know what I should do. Great. That lives there too. So it's making sure that you give your managers a single source of truth, if whatever you do. But the manager playbook, so to speak, lives in your toolkit. And that is day 0 through day 365 of what their person's going to go through. And I want you to use them though to build this. If they're owning it today, you can't just suddenly say, we're going to take it over, because we're not. We are going to support them and we are going to say, hey, I'm going to take what you're doing and we are going to scale it. And I'm going to make sure that you're getting credit for the effectiveness of your onboarding for your employees. Maybe even take a look at whatever data that you have available. It could be engagement scores around certain managers where they're getting high remarks from employees. See who's the best of the best, and figure out how then you can take that and bring it to other managers too. But like, there's a lot of different ways you can go about it. It could be word of mouth, like, oh yeah, everybody knows this manager is really good at it. Great, use that. but get them in a room together, and try to replicate what they're doing. But don't exclude, like you have to, their voice has to be in it, and you kind of got to butter them up a little bit and be like, I want to give you the spotlight. And you do, that is what you're doing, but you just have to make it about them and how successful they've been. So,
Good, good stuff. I got a question. I know, Lysandra, I see another one in the chat, but I see this in the Q&A. So Sue asked, how do you get managers and senior leadership to actually care about the teams and people to ensure they are invested as well? Does it help to include it in their reviews that they are engaged and everboarding their teams in a good way?
yes, and yes, and yes. They should be evaluated. I'm a firm believer in 360 feedback, right? You should be getting, everyone should feel empowered to ask for feedback from their peers, from their supervisors, and from their subordinates if they're in a people leadership role. They need to know their blind spots. A lot of what I see when that doesn't, that's a cultural thing, right? When that doesn't
Mhm.
exist, you gotta get to the source. You have to really drill in. Um, if you're not already using some sort of survey to measure this, that's step one, just an annual engagement survey. From there, you need to have like a mid-year, and then from there, you really need to have pulse surveys and like collaborative focus groups to focus on like the very, very obvious things that are popping up for your organization. But I would trickle it down to the team level and figure out, what is it? Is it lack of trust that if I speak up, my opinion is valued and heard? Like I feel heard if I do speak up, or I don't feel scared to, like I won't be scolded or, punished for doing so. If I take a risk, is it supported, or will I get punished if I fail? Like that type of stuff shows up on these surveys. That is where a lot of team dysfunction comes from. Um, Accountability is a big one. So you got to get to the root cause first before you can start solutioning any of it. I really caution you to just go with any like off the shelf training right away until you've actually identified the problem, because an external consultant's probably going to be like, yeah, absolutely, that'll solve all of it. But you don't know
Mm,
that. You really do your homework first, and if you don't have any data on it, don't go off of your gut. Maybe you can have some conversations with the leader of that group and ask them, like, what have you done in the past and what worked, what didn't? Why do you think it's not working? Really do like an interview style with them. Say, hey, I would like to measure it. Here's how I would like to measure it, like a survey type thing. If you don't have budget for it, I've been there. I've designed them myself. It's not too bad. You have to stress, though, that it's confidential, not anonymous when it comes to
mm.
those types of surveys. 360 feedback is going to be hard for them, but if you can go get the leader at the top to say, "Yeah, I want you to do that. I want their employees to evaluate them." Then it's not you trying to convince them, right? Get that sponsorship and trickle it down. Um, it is just stress. Nobody's being fired over this. It is being used to get the course correct. Like we are course correcting, we are not eliminating. And you just have to be very careful in your messaging with that as well. Um, there is a book, and it's behind me. I'm not going to go grab it, but it's called Reculturing. Has anybody heard of it?
I have not.
Huge fan of it, for
Okay.
this type of stuff. I'm trying to remember the backstory on the author. Essentially, she worked for like Google or somewhere like that. I shared it when I was at Training Mag and I was speaking there a couple of years ago, and so many people tagged me in a post, yeah, like 6 months as time went on, and said, "This was the best thing ever. Thank you for the recommendation." So I do, if that is an issue, that is a great resource other than like the practical steps that I just laid out too.
It is all about culture, Amber. As you're answering these questions, I'm thinking to myself, if you have um, tone from the top that supports this, this is going to work for you. If you have values and a mission that are clear and are lived, this is going to work for you. This is where your sales background helps you, Amber, because you can probably win the love with those whose support you need to reinforce that this is the best way to go and make this happen and build in that accountability. So in many ways, as L&D professionals, we really need to turn on our sales skills, which not,
Yeah.
some are better than others, to because we need leadership to say this is important. I value this too. This matters. Yes, managers, this is part of your job to do this.
Yes, yes. That is why. So I was working on a project for LinkedIn, and they talked me into coming on full time for them, and that is why they brought me in. They said you're very good at getting everybody on the same page.
Yes.
I actually ran a book club for a global leadership at a past software company called On the Same Page. And I do have a program around that where, and I've done it for my local chapter, where I help you put your sales hat on as an L&D'er because I do think it is so important. We're all in the
Yeah.
business of sales. If you've ever read, what is it? It's Dan Pink. Um, Sales is for everyone. Oh my gosh, I'm drawing a blank right now, but it's like sales.
Yes. Yes.
Yes, he talks about that. If your job is about influencing others and getting them to like change
Yes.
their behavior, you're in sales.
Yeah. Well, and
So,
I've used that too. I work with biostatisticians in a pharmaceutical company, and like they don't want to be in sales. But I'm like, you're in sales because you have to convince people of your ideas and taking a certain direction and including things in a protocol. So we all have to grow our sales skills. But you're naturally good at it. So it's so helpful. We have another question, and I want to make sure that I don't lose it. Mark asked a question about, can you talk more about metrics that predict the first year of an employee's tenure?
ooh, okay. So I'm going to share my screen again. I'm going to pull up, I don't know if everybody's an ATD member, so you may not be able to see the article. So I'm just going to pull it up now if you want a screenshot. Don't tell anybody. And this is recorded. Okay, we're on
There
a
you
roll.
go.
All right, so here, I did see that one come through. I started to pull up the chat. So, how to measure and communicate what matters. And so, this is what I shared in that article. You so replace, and I already talked about this, but replace activity-based data points with business-aligned indicators. So what does that mean? Number one is readiness. Did your onboarding build a confident foundation? You can measure confidence. I don't need to tell you how to do that. And then manager sign-offs. That goes back to alignment. What do they want to see? And they may not know. You may have to say, here's what another manager does. What do you think? That's what they're looking for. Application. Are they using what they learned? It goes back to that phrase, right? Can they do it? Can they do it well? Like we have to start though with like, can they do it? Um, Manager observed behaviors. This is in that development phase more so, but like I said, managers are present during onboarding, even if it's training led in your organization. Managers should not be absent. They are still there. They need to be involved in this. This article actually, I have a great case study on how managers are involved in onboarding at this other company. Engagement, I think, is really powerful in the early days. Um, you're convincing them during onboarding in those early days
Hmm.
that they made the right decision to join your organization, right? So, are
Yes.
they invested? Manager enablement, are they supporting the growth? Autonomy, how quickly are they productive? You can measure that pretty easily. That one's probably the easiest one. Just call it autonomy, though, instead of productivity, because productivity and performance are two different things. And then retention and mobility. Are we keeping and growing them? And that's why I say design for the year, don't design for day one, because we're like, oh, great, we kept people past 30 days, 60 days, 90 days. That doesn't tell as powerful of a story as we kept, you know, 75% of our new hires for a year. That tells a way better story than we lost 50% in the first 90 days. So I hope that answered that question around like some metrics that are less about checking the box.
Very, very helpful. And Mark comments, I would think learning agility would be a good predictor.
Ooh, yeah, maybe you could even offer like a growth mindset type assessment early on and kind of see and put that into their portfolio for the manager to be aware of as they're coaching them. Self-efficacy, anything like that would be good too.
I have a question about a lot of the organizations I work with have smaller HR teams. They may not even have an L&D professional there. So, with those organizations, limited resources, small HR teams, what are 2 to 3 high impact changes they can make immediately to improve onboarding?
Hmm. Automation. So you are a team of one. You will never be able to get time off if you do not automate your onboarding process. So I have been a team of one, um, or the first in the door before building the team. And
Mm-hmm.
I learned that lesson the hard way. So automation is not AI. Automation is like use the tools that you have and go find whoever can help you with it because I wasn't super tool literate at the time. But you need to be able to say, okay, new hires starting this Monday. And I had a whiteboard over here for the longest time of start dates for new hires. So I knew always, okay, this person's coming, this person's coming. You have to automate your process. So when they start on day one, you have your checklist of like what has to happen. Their desk space needs to be set up. I can't tell you how many times I've walked into like a company where they weren't prioritizing the person's workspace. And if they're virtual, do they have their computer? Are they able to access? Like everything has to be automated day one. Go figure out who your support people are to help with that. I mean, these things seem minor. I want you to, it's almost like documenting the customer journey. I want you to document the employee journey from the time that the offer is signed. And I've done this in Miro board, and it's very tedious, but I'm telling you, you will thank yourself later when you're taking PTO and you're heading out on a cruise. You need to use your Miro board and you need to go step by step by step of exactly like they signed this document, this email gets sent, and you need to put who is doing what and who is it going to. And what you'll find is you'll start to see gaps in, oh, IT doesn't actually tell the manager that. Here, I've been doing that the whole time. And when I was out, I just thought I was ensuring it was getting done. In fact, I was actually the only one doing it. So if
Mm.
you have to go have a conversation with HR, L&D, IT, the hiring manager, marketing, finance, there are so many disconnects in the pre-hire process. When I work with a company, the first 2 weeks, I swear, we are just breaking down the pre-boarding. And they're like, we had no idea. I'm like, yes, yes. Like now you all are going to walk away from this feeling so much better and trusting each other more. Um, I think that is like the best thing that you can do. And that in itself is a big enough lift. The second thing, and I wrote this in my book, is if you are the only one, let's face it, you can't be designing content alone if you really want to create like a self-served or self-led learning library. You need to start to templatize and make it possible for your SMEs to create and for you to just QA or QC um, what they've created. But create the templates, make it easy, do like a train the trainer workshop for them, empower them, have one person from each department. Heck, I had somebody from product create a training on how to use the coffee machine because he was so frustrated that new hires had no idea how to use it and we were constantly running out. I'm like, great. Let's put a little QR code on the side of like, here's your little quick little lesson on how to create, brew coffee
How
here.
cool.
So, learning lab, it's your learning advisory board is what I call it.
Yes.
That is in my book as well. So,
Yeah. So you have to farm it out to folks that are non-L&D professionals to you build a team of who you have.
correct. Yeah, nothing gets done alone.
Awesome. Awesome. Well, what is next for you and how can we support you?
Okay. So I'm working on a couple exciting things right now. The first one is I'm actually turning this into a true certification. I don't promote this much, but I do a ton with AI. I mean, again, working at LinkedIn, we are at the forefront of AI because we're owned by Microsoft. So I have actually created an environment in which like you'll go through, it'll be self-led, but my book is the source of truth. And it will help you create what you need to for your internal purposes. Instead of coming and listening to me talk for 60 minutes and then you try to go do it after. Like you actually go through the process and it gives you immediate feedback. And it is working brilliantly. I'm still testing it out. I am looking for like 1 to 2 people to test it if anybody would like to message me after this. Um, and because I just want the feedback before I just give it to the world. But I do know it's going to be very valuable in the feedback that I've gotten so far, which is, wow, I can do this in my own time because this is not an easy lift, but it's super impactful if you're willing to put in the work.
Very, very cool.
Yeah.
Well, you have been amazing. You are amazing. I'm so happy to see someone taking onboarding so seriously, and I'm surprised that many organizations still are not. So this is great stuff that we can take back to the workplace, to our clients. Um, let us know how we can help you in the future. Stay in touch. I know you're going to be presenting for Philly ATD very soon. I know I saw Mark
Yeah.
put that out there, so I look forward to that. And you are always welcome back as a participant. Join our Meet the Authors. And when you come to Philly, let us know.
Awesome. Yeah, I can't wait.
Cool,
Thank you,
cool.
Teresa.
All right, thank you. And gang, good luck to all of you. February 26th, if you want to come to the Pyramid Club, it's going to be a great program. And also, this isn't scheduled yet, but I'm going to let you guys know. We have Bruce Tolgan who is going to join us. And I don't know if you guys know who Bruce Tolgan is, but he's been around a while. In 1995, I bought his book about dealing with Generation X.
Hmm.
Generation X, they were the people then. And then it became the millennials, these millennials. And now it's Gen Z. So, but he back in the day wrote the book on Gen X, and he's written a number of books on generations and management. We are going to get him scheduled for March or April. But Bruce Tolgan, he should be a cool author to speak with. Amber, when I get out to Omaha, I'm going to come visit you.
Perfect. All right, I'll take you to the world's largest pumpkin patch. We're gonna have a great time.
I would love that. I would love it. Thanks, gang. So now it's the after party. The recording has stopped. It's the after party. Amber, thank you so much. Lysandra, thank you for your help. And gang in the chat room, you guys are on fire. No surprise, a lot of L&D people here. We have
Yeah.
lots to say. Lots to say. We always do. It's
Yes.
good, 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 good stuff. Oh my gosh. Lysandra, what's next for you today? What are you doing?
Oh, what am I doing? I am doing, now I'm going to sound like the consultant I am, right? Heads down work.
You got
No,
to
just tying up the week, and getting ready for Monday. So,
Nice.
yeah.
Nice. I actually have one more call today. I have one coaching call this afternoon. Then I have comedy tonight that I'm doing as a fundraiser for a friend. So that will
Nice.
Hmm.
be cool. Amber, what's next for you today?
I am packing and heading to Miami.
Oh my gosh. We so need to connect after this. I
Yeah.
am such a cruise girl. Like I love it. And Lysandra, I was telling her I found a way to get free cruises.
Oh, yeah. I'm definitely gonna take you up on that because I'm trying to plan another one. I'm like, oh, you get to go to a lot of places for the price, but I've
Yes.
not done one yet. So I'm gonna try to see how I feel about it. So,
I've
Yeah.
never been on a cruise.
Oh my gosh. I would say, now are you doing a 7 day cruise, Amber?
it's 6, but yeah,
Six?
pretty close.
I first timers now, I did 7 day as my first cruise and I was fine. But first timers, I usually say like grab a 4 day. Like Lysandra, you can go out of New Jersey and they have lots of 3 day, 4 day cruises.
Okay.
And that way you get a sense of
Hmm.
what it's all about. But oh my gosh, best vacation ever. Well, I am gonna get some tea and stretch and get ready for my phone call. Amber, thank you again.
Thank you,
Yes.
Amber. This was
Good.
such a robust session. Thank you
It
so much.
was. It
I
Yeah.
was.
talk fast, so I'm like, yes, I know. I try to get a lot in a short amount of time, but there's a lot to share around the concept. It's very, I don't want to call it complex. It's very impactful. It feels like a lot, but really when you start to break it down, it's not. But it is, that's why I'm creating this cert because I can't, fit enough in 60 minutes for people. And yeah, it's just, it takes time. So.
Yeah. Yeah.
Well, it's
Thank you for that.
impactful.
What a treat on a Friday.
I know. I know. Well, it's good stuff, impactful stuff. Hopefully, more companies get on board with this. It would be in their own best interest to do it.
Mhm.
So,
Yeah.
cool, cool. All right. Love you guys. Oh, Josh, I'll teach you
Bye.
free cruises. He just made a comment. I'll teach you how to get a free cruise. We'll talk.
All
Happy
All
right.
right.
Friday.
Love you
Bye-bye,
guys.
everyone.
Bye.